Greetings, everyone. Your cartoonist pal Stan here for another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. Uh, you're maybe watching this live on a Wednesday night, but I'm not there on the Wednesday night. We are pre-recording this because I have commitments that are keeping me away from my computer. But other than that, it's going to be exactly the same. And in fact, I've got a really good guest this week that I'm very excited to have a conversation with. Those of you who don't know, the show is about celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. Whenever I say that, I swallow the in Dungeons. I'm a little worried about that. 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm celebrating that with this show where I'm interviewing friends and colleagues who worked on the game, either with me, before me, or after me, and we talk about how they got into the game, what it was like working on it, and if you're in the live chat, we field some questions and have a little fun. This week, my guest is Karen S. Conlin, who was an editor and creative director at TSR. She helped to mold the Forgotten Realms when it first came out, and was in charge of the freelance editors for a long time, and a lot of other cool stuff. Kind of person that doesn't get talked to a lot. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and share this with y'all. So before I say anything dumb and embarrass myself, let me bring on Karen. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the dungeon.
Thank you. It's pretty bright in here for a
I,
dungeon. It's kind of
well,
nice.
I like to keep it friendly.
Yeah.
It's the
It's not
friendlier
really a
dungeon.
dungeon. I'm on the second floor in my house. This is not
Right.
the dungeon.
Well, then you're like a classic original French meaning of dungeon. So there you go.
I could get out my etymological dictionary and look all that up, but I'm not going to.
Fair enough.
I'll pass. I'll pass.
So Karen, thank
Yeah.
you for joining me. Why don't you do a better job of explaining to people who you are? Better job than I did is what I'm saying.
I was going to say you did a pretty good job.
Hmm.
Who I am in terms of what I did at TSR.
Yeah, let's start with that.
Okay. I started out as just an editor, just an editor, nothing
Me
else.
too.
Yeah, I started out as an editor, and before long, people figured out I could do more than that, and I was really good at organizing and managing. Project management turned out to be my thing. So I ended up being the one in charge of all the freelance editors. I had a stable of about 50 people. And I was mostly in charge of doing the scheduling. I did it with the help of the other product group leaders,
Right.
because I couldn't just blindly go, well, I'm going to get so and so to write this. I'd have to say, do you think so and so would be good for this? And they'd say yes, or oh my God, no, and then we would figure out something else. But I was in charge of getting all their contract drawn up. I was in charge of shepherding their stuff through the in-house procedure once they were done with it, once they sent it to me and said, okay, here it is. So I had lots more projects on my desk than a lot of the other people did.
Right.
But that's not to say that I did more work than the other people did. I just did it at a different stage. Because Bruce Hurd was my partner in crime, as it were, because he handled the freelance designers.
Right.
So, and some of them did both.
Yes.
So it was not uncommon for one of us to go, hey, I want to hire so-and-so for project X. Is that okay with your schedule? And we'd have to look and make sure we weren't double booking anybody or whatever. So, that was the bulk of my work there, was shepherding the freelance people stuff. In addition to running the group that I was in charge of, which was Forgotten Realms, Marvel Superheroes, Top Secret, Amazing Engine, and I don't remember what else. Greyhawk.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't remember
Just
all of them.
couple things,
It's
little.
been 27 years.
I
And the
know.
only reason I know exactly 27 years is my daughter is 27 years old.
Ooh,
So
that.
that is how I keep track.
Yeah, I was gonna say that almost not apropos of our conversation, but last week I still uh, have a regular gaming group with folks from the old days with
That's
John Ratliff
cool.
and Steve Winter and Jeff Grubb, and
That's cool.
we were talking about Amazing Engine since you brought that up, and
Mhm.
we're looking up. Um, I had thought that you had done design work on Fairy Queen and Country, so
A
uh,
part of it.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh no, Zeb did that," so we're digging online trying to get
We,
credits.
we did.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have a hard copy of it here, but it's on the other side of the room.
right,
Um my husband actually ordered it because he wanted it. I don't think I had very many of my old hard copies at all. I had given them to my parents. Because mom liked to have things to look at and go, my daughter did this when somebody come over to the house. You know, look at what she did. Her name is right here. Um,
that's
and
my
then he,
parents all kind of. I'm guessing, as you were intimating, my parents didn't get what I did.
not really.
They asked for stuff, and then they asked me to stop sending them stuff. It's like they had a few on the bookshelf, and that was enough.
Mine never asked to stop sending it. They liked to be able to put more stuff on the
Yeah,
shelf and go, look, the shelf's getting fuller. Look at all this stuff.
they didn't
But
want
yeah, did they
they
get
didn't
it?
have enough room on the bookshelf.
They didn't they didn't really grok the game
Right,
except in the very lofty concept of it's an imaginary game like cops and robbers.
right,
You're pretending to be, and there's this loose, in theory,
yeah.
this loose framework that you're working within, and they understood it on that level, but any deeper, and no, they were gone. They were out. That was that. But yeah, I did some design work on Fairy Queen.
Mhm.
I don't remember which section, sadly, but I do know that because I did some design work, I got an Origins award that year, and I was stunned because don't ask me where it is now. I have no idea, but I got one.
You should put it on the shelf next to your copy of the book.
I was like, wow, here, look.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
So I don't. You know what? I should have asked you this before we came on. The people looking for your credits in those books are not going to see Conlin, though.
No, they're probably going to see either Boomgarden, which is my maiden name, my birth name,
Hmm.
or Martin, which was my first married name.
All right. I found most of your credits that I see are Boom Garden.
Yeah. We got divorced in my brain's going to turn off.
It's all right. This show doesn't have to be about your divorce if you don't want it to
I
be.
honestly don't remember. It was early in my tenure at TSR,
Yeah.
and I sent out an email and said, from going forward, this is how I will be,
Right.
styling my name, and everybody went, oh, okay, cool,
Yeah. Well,
whatever.
none of my names are actually Stan, so I got that going with you too.
So you got that, yeah, yeah.
All right. So let's start back before you joined the company, and how. What was your introduction uh, to Dungeons and Dragons?
In the way back time, um, yeah, yeah. I feel like one of the wild kids from Mad Max.
Right.
Time gone by. Um, I was working at a tech publisher
Mm,
with my then husband, actually. And he worked on the videos. They did video training for um, corporations.
Hmm.
And the example we always used was if United Airlines buys a new something or other to help them do something better, a ticketing system or whatever, we would have a course that would teach them what they needed to know.
Okay.
So he worked on the video portion of it, excuse me, and I worked on the manuals that went with the video. So there was a lot of coordination there between their department and our department. And I don't remember what we called the writers. They had a special name, the software people. Um, so there too, lots of technical stuff, lots
Right.
of shepherding pieces through, that's really where I kind of got into the project management thing.
Mm.
Um, and as it turned out, we both started playing adventure on
Right.
the Wang word processing systems that we used up in editorial. So it was a green screen, not an amber screen, but a
Right.
green screen.
Right.
And that was lunch. You'd sit in there with your lunch and you're playing the game. And um, my
Man,
husband thought
the
that was,
Wang puns really want to come out, and I'm
they
like,
do, but sit on those. Just tamp those down. It's all good. Um, and David would come up and we would sometimes share an office space during a lunch hour and we would play.
hmm,
And the head of quality assurance
right.
came by. He roamed the building freely. And he came by and saw us play and he goes, "Oh, you guys play that?" And we're like, "Yeah, we think it's fun." And he goes, "Well, my family and I play this thing." And he invited us to his house on a Friday night for dinner
Wow.
and game because his sons both played. His
Right.
wife knew it, but she didn't play. Um, Not that she didn't like to, it just wasn't her thing.
Right.
So it was always him and at least two of the sons, sometimes three, and then maybe one or two other people, whoever they could get to come over.
That's
So
awesome.
we went, and his name was Odin. Swear to God, his
Went over
name
to
was
Odin's.
Odin.
I swear to Odin.
Yes, his name was Odin, and Odin invited us to his house, which was the oddest little bungalow thing I have ever seen. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was very eclectic and kind of indescribable, and I'll leave
Right.
it at that. And the gaming was in the basement. And so we went downstairs and they had it all set up really nice. They had a very nice table, not like a, thousands of dollars wormwood gaming table,
Right. Right.
but a really nice dining table with, and real chairs. You weren't sitting on boxes, none of that stuff. Um, and we started to play. And we had to roll up our characters. They didn't have any pre-gens. We had to learn that first. So there was a couple hours right there. And by then, it was time to eat. So Goldie called us, and we all went upstairs and got big bowls of chili and hunks of bread and took them all downstairs and sat at the table again.
Oh,
And then we started the game. And it was the island of Pak, Pak.
okay.
And our party was fighting lizard men.
Okay.
Our party fought lizard men for 6 or 7 hours.
Wow.
It was nothing but combat. There was nothing else to the entire thing. So it was just everybody taking turns rolling dice and seeing if they lost their head or if they took a tail off of a lizard man or whatever.
So what
But
what year would this be roughly?
1981,
Okay.
maybe 81 or
Ish.
82.
Yeah.
Yeah, early 80s.
Right.
Yeah,
So were you
yeah.
using the hardcovers? Were you using the player's handbook, or were you using one of the intro boxes or the
What I recall was hardcovers.
right?
Not the D&D boxes.
Right.
It was the AD&D, but it
Mm-hmm.
was first edition, you know.
Yeah. No.
Um,
They came out in 78, 79,
yeah.
like this.
Yeah, that's what they had. That's what they had. And we would pass them around the table. I mean, they didn't have multiple copies. They had
You
like two.
you may have
So,
the best. I've been doing this for more than a dozen weeks now. Talked to a whole bunch of people. You may have the best D&D origin story. How do you get to start to play D&D? Well, I was invited by Odin.
yeah.
It's like
I had an invitation from Odin
Odin.
and I could not
I was
say no.
I was called by Odin and I came.
I'm trying to
I,
remember the son that was the DM. I want to say his name was Olaf. It was all very Scandinavian.
very
It
scared.
was all very, very ethnic at their house. Yeah, it was fun.
Good. All right, I'm
But
going to
yeah,
switch over views here, and I'm
okay.
going to start doing my sketching while we chat. This
All
week,
right.
doing the cover to the Spelljammer box set by Jeff Easley. You can see the watermark. I got this off Jeff Easley's site without
Cool.
asking. Sorry, Jeff. But you can
Well,
buy this over at jeffeasley.com. He does
I
prints.
think he'll probably say it's okay.
Yeah.
You
Good.
know,
Okay.
I think he'll say it. Fair warning, I just heard a from down on the floor,
Yeah.
and our youngest cat has joined the room here.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that he will just entertain himself in the window watching the birds.
You know what? I can tell you from experience that on the internet, cats are gold. So if he wants to wander
Oh,
on,
they are.
I'm not going to complain. But
They are. And he's a very sweet boy, but he gets a little rambunctious sometimes. So I'm talking about you. Oh, there he goes. He's leaving. He's like, okay, fine. I've had enough.
oh well.
That's how he is. That's
All
just how
right.
he is.
So you and Odin and Olaf were playing.
Yeah. Sitting in the basement. We ended up staying overnight because it ran so late. Odin's
Wow.
like, why don't you guys just crash here? It's really too late for you to drive home because it was about 45 minutes between our place and theirs. So we just crashed on couches and stuff. And,
That's a super first engagement with D&D.
it was pretty wild. And then as we were winding down for that night, we got promised that it was not always like that. We just happened to come on that night.
Right.
And there would be other
There's
interaction.
more than just this.
There's more to it than just sitting there trying to decide if you've whacked a lizard man with your battle axe. So
On
and
the
then
other hand, people have spent 20 years playing that game too. So
yeah, that's true. And my first husband and I played a lot. That got us into it. And we did play every weekend. We had the same group.
yeah.
We did campaigns, and there were a couple times where something happened in game that absolutely destroyed a player.
Right.
And one time it was me. And we took a break the next week because I was the one who was in tears, but everybody was upset.
Oh.
And we're like, okay, you know what? We're going to take a break from this and regroup, and we'll come back in 2 weeks. Because absolutely by accident, my dwarven fighter, who I'd played to about 10th level at that point, accidentally fireballed her war dog, who had been with her since he was a puppy.
Oh.
He had gotten away from her and out of sight, and she didn't know. And they were in a hedge maze with like yellow musk creepers or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Something that you needed fire to get through. And so she fireballed, and in the smoking ruins, there was what was left of her dog. And she was just like, you know what? I'm done. I can't go on. And she
Right.
picked up what was left of him and she walked off into the distance, and that was it. Nobody ever saw her again.
Wow.
It was just too much.
Well, you know what? We're lucky that you didn't walk off into the distance.
No, because I enjoyed playing too much. She was also the character that went through a gender swap at one point.
Yeah.
Went from Brunhilde to Brunharold, and Brunharold was really confused because this armor just wasn't fitting the way he thought it should. But he got creative and was putting wine bags in places that he had room for. So I'm just going to use it. Yeah, that was a wild
Why
time.
does it feel so pinchy?
It was a pretty wild time.
Um,
But yeah, we had fun with
that's
that.
that is awesome. You're also the first person that I've talked to who got into the game as an adult as opposed to
Oh
a
yeah,
student.
yeah.
Right?
I
And
didn't know what it was. I mean, when I was a kid, 76, right? 76?
well, 74 technically. It
74.
76, 77 is when it kind of got out of
Yeah, okay.
the
That's when
working. Yeah.
that was my first couple of years of college. I graduated high school in 75 and college in 79. And I didn't start playing until like 81. So yeah.
Um,
And I didn't know anybody at college who played it. I knew guys who played war games,
right.
and I used to hang out with them when they were doing that, Panzer Blitz and stuff like that. Um, but I didn't know anybody who played RPGs at that point.
Um, all right. That's so. I could keep going on that. I'm just fascinated by that. There's so much about what you're describing that is exactly the way I tried. So you're talking about how we described it to our parents, and
Uh-huh.
whether or not they get it. One of the ways I tried to describe it was it's how you get together with the folks from down the road and you have you play bridge on a Friday
I
night.
was going to say a bridge night or
It's
pinochle or
it's a game that we play, and you don't really have to understand what it is. We get together and we play this game, and they
Mhm.
they were too hung up on not understanding the game to process that end of it.
The
Um,
social aspect of
yeah.
it. The we
So
get together and, eat chips and drink soda and throw dice
so
around a table.
about the same time, because I'm somewhere between 5 and 10 years younger than you.
Okay.
I'm about that time. I'm in high school, and I guess about that time I'm in college. But I was right around where I'm trying to explain to my parents what it's like, and you're living the life.
I'm doing it,
We're
baby.
doing it. Oh,
I'm in there. And this sounds like a good segue into the how did I end up there?
that's where we were gonna go next. You read my mind.
We my husband and I had a housemate, a roommate. We lived in an apartment, and
Mm,
she was a good friend, and she was part of our gaming group.
mm-hmm.
And at one time, I don't remember what precipitated it, but at one time, the three of us decided that we were going to apply as a group to work there.
Okay.
We are a package deal.
Okay.
This guy is an artist. This person can edit stuff, and this person can do pretty much whatever you want. She would have worked in the warehouse. She
Right.
didn't care. She's just like, we need to work there. So we wrote up a letter, and we made sure it said what we wanted it to say, and we sent it off. And of course, we never heard anything.
Right.
And that was fine. We didn't really expect to. That was, a shot in the dark. And years go by, and I end up um, I went from the tech place to Scott Forsman. Yes, that's Scott Forsman with Dick and Jane and Ted and Sally and Spot the dog and Fluff the cat. And yes, there were formal oil paintings of Dick and Jane and Ted and Sally in the boardroom upstairs, and they
Real.
were as terrifying as you might imagine. Um, and there I worked in electronic publishing, and we did um, educational software, games, math and English.
Right.
and school management. And I was hired to work for the school management, but I ended up getting to do a little bit of everything. So I went from there to thinking I had been given an offer by somebody I had worked with at the tech place. And it turned out there were crossed wires. So I quit my job without really having any place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to a couple of years of wandering aimlessly in the wilderness,
Right.
looking for a rock to hit with my stick. And as I was working at Lane Bryant as an assistant manager,
Okay.
I had applied at TSR,
Mm.
and I had gotten I think I had gotten an initial interview. Yeah, I did. I got an initial set of interviews. Steve Winter's probably going to go, yep, 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 that's right. Because I know I spoke to him and I spoke to Mike Cook. Um, and I can't remember who else. I want to say there was a third person. But I went through all this and I took their editing test because everybody had to take it.
Right.
And I found errors in the editing test that they didn't know were there.
That's
So
good.
then they corrected the editing test because I found there were errors in it. And then I never heard anything. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird because I thought it went really, really well. And after a little while, I made a phone call to try to find something out. And within like a week after I had been there, they went into a hiring freeze.
Uh,
So then I ended up doing the retail thing. And when I was working at Lane Bryant as an assistant manager in a holiday season,
yeah.
pardon me, which was as awful as you would think. If you've never worked retail, you cannot imagine. If you have worked retail, you know exactly what I'm talking
What I
about.
can say is retail holiday season. Ugh.
Yeah. And I got a phone call at home from Steve,
Yeah.
and he said, we're hiring again, and everybody remembered you, and we're wondering if you'd like to come work here. And I went, yeah, but I will start after the holidays. I am not going to walk out.
Right.
I would I have in a heartbeat, but I also
Yeah.
knew that that was like not the right thing to do. So I said, let me start right after the New Year's, whatever the Monday is that comes out. It was like January 6th,
Right.
a day which now lives in infamy for a whole different reason. I just realized that it was January 6th. So January 6th, 1986 was my first day.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Another. So, wow. There's so many ways. So many ways your story and mine are parallel.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I was not. I was working in the industry, but I also
Mhm.
did not get hired when they interviewed me the first time. I was working
Okay.
at West End Games, um, and a bunch
Right.
of
Right.
other people from there had been hired. Everyone at West End was sure I was going next, and in
Mm,
fact, I did get interviewed, but I didn't get the job. Um,
okay.
and for good reason. It was tough competition. I mean,
Yeah.
but I didn't get the job, and West End was not. They were supposed to be promoting me, and they just weren't because they were sure I was leaving. And so
Oh,
I was beginning to think about getting out entirely, and sitting there
yeah.
talking, working on a book with my production manager over my shoulder, and the phone rings, and it's David Wise. And he says, so he says, it was good meeting you at Gen Con and blah, blah, blah. We have a very brief thing. And so he just says, so, you going to come work for me or what?
So formal.
Like, yeah.
So
In
what's the
fact, you
deal?
were one of the
Huh?
people that interviewed me that
Yep.
you know,
I
picked someone
remember.
else other than me, and I didn't hold it against you.
Good. I'm glad
Yeah,
because
but
I
like I
honestly
said,
don't remember who
everyone
we
that got
chose
hired
instead.
was awesome. Like, and
There were
that,
so many people. I
yeah,
mean, it was always just uh put the names in a hat and pick one. I mean, it was so hard to
Right.
choose. So hard. But
Um.
yeah,
Anyway,
I
yeah, that's
remember
just another
doing all that anyway.
parallel.
Another what?
Another parallel.
Yes,
All right. So you January 6th, you had your own day of infamy.
I did.
Uh, you joined, and what were the first things you were working on?
D&D, not AD&D. It
Right.
was D&D.
Back in the that's another one that kind of for the younger people watching this, there was a time when Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons were different things.
Separate things.
Yeah.
I was given one of each of the boxed sets for D&D
Yeah.
and told to read them.
Okay.
So that's what I did for I don't know how many weeks it was. That was my day. I was reading rule books for each level, you know.
Right.
Um, and then one of the first things I did, I don't remember the first thing. At least I don't remember it being the first thing. One
Right.
of the first things was Day of Al Akbar.
Okay.
Okay. And I thought it was cool. Arabian Nights thing, kind
Right.
of, sort of. I liked it. And the thing I remember the most isn't even mine. It was a comment from Steve Winter. Because we always got to see the artwork, right? You
Right.
wander down to the artist room and go in, and Larry had something playing on well, they took turns, but somebody would be in charge of the boombox for the day.
Right.
And so you walk in and there's music blaring, and you go to whoever's station you want to look at and, shoot the shit with them for a little bit. And when we got to look at the final, it was beautiful. These gorgeous, voluptuous women on these, silken pillows with this floaty, glowing chalice thing. And their clothes were awfully diaphanous too. And Steve just looked at it and kind of looked around at us and went, "Jeff's been eating red meat again." And we were like, "Yep, yeah, okay." I I think my memory is we had them make the silks a little bit less transparent.
Yeah.
They weren't awful, but they were on the edge, you know. Um, but yeah, Jeff's been eating red meat again. I remember doing that one. I remember doing something that had um kind of pagany overtones.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I was Wiccan or Wickish anyway. And pretty much everybody knew it. I didn't keep it quiet. There wasn't any reason to. Um
Right.
and
I like Wickish. That's
Wickish. Because I was never formally initiated into any tradition or anything. I took a mail order course. I'm one of those.
okay.
I did a lot of my own reading, and I took a mail order course, and the woman who ran it had run away from the ice capades when she was a teenager and was
What?
yeah, she had been
What?
she had been a skater with the ice capades, and
What's
she
your
ran
history?
away
Oh,
from home
ran away from
and
the
joined.
ice capades.
Yeah, she ran away from home and joined the ice capades, and then she ran away from there. And yeah, she was something else. She was interesting.
I know.
um Fascinating woman. She she offered to initiate me, and I couldn't afford to fly to New Hampshire to have it done, so I was like, thanks, but
Okay.
no. So that never happened. But there was something in whatever this product was that felt very pagany.
Right.
Something about um, the cardinal directions and elements that belong to each one. And I remember going to Bruce, I think it was, and saying, actually, air goes with east and earth goes with north. And he's like, is that important? I said, I don't know. How important do you think it is to have them be in line with what we know? Do we care? And I
Right.
don't remember what the answer was. I honestly don't remember what the answer was. But further down that line, when Lorraine got wind that I was what I was, she would ask me all kinds of things. She'd be like, can
Yeah.
you look at this book and tell me if you think it's okay? Or at Gen Con, Pagan Publishing was a couple aisles over and, down a
Right.
block or whatever. She's like, can you go over by them and make sure that they're not selling anything they shouldn't be selling? I don't want anybody to get in trouble. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do that, I guess. Whatever. It was just odd. And Mike, were you there when Mike Dobson was there?
No, no, I can't.
He was already gone when you got there. He he said something because, of course, the Satanic Panic thing was happening,
Right.
right? The end of it, but still. And in one of the meetings, one of the big wiggy meetings, he had occasion to say, well, I know for a fact there aren't any Satanists on staff. And as far as I know, we only have one witch. And I was like, thanks so much. Thank you so much for that. So, yeah, that was. And of course, then my mom was like, can you be a Christian and work there? I was like, well, I'm sure you can, but I'm not, Mom, right? And she almost passed out. So that was kind of that was a whole nother thing.
that's, that's a separate story.
It was. That was a whole nother thing.
Um, all right, so you came in and you're doing editing on all
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't know. And part of me wants to say, what other stories have you got, Karen? And part of me is like, okay, so what's the next beat, right? So you're how is it that you get from being doing just editing to doing some editing and design, or to get it into the managing editing?
Well, the design thing came later, and I never really did a lot of it. I mean, Fairy Queen and Country, yeah, I did design work on that, but I honestly think that was the only thing I did any design work on, and that's because what I was doing was flavor and color. It
Hmm.
wasn't mechanics because, frankly, I was never very good at that whole mechanic thing. So
You know,
it
there's a lot of people that would say there were several people on staff that had that same description.
that we're just never really that good at the
Mechanic,
mechanic thing.
that's sort of the thing.
It kind of depended, I would go to some of the other editors and designers and go, can you tell me if this makes sense? Because I'm not
Yeah,
sure it does. Um, but it was very organic as I remember it.
right.
The first change was getting into doing all the freelance stuff. And I think it's just because we were sitting around talking in one of the meetings.
Yeah.
And they're like, we really need somebody who can do this. And I was like, well, that's project management. And I did it at my last job. So, I can do that. And they were like, okay, here,
Done.
thump. You take this. Okay, fine. Um, and the creative director thing, that came down from Lorraine, as I remember it. We're going to have these managers who aren't really managers because they would have had to pay us management salary and they didn't want to do that,
Right.
But so all of the authority and none of the or all the responsibility and none of the
None
authority
of the
to
authority.
actually say anything. Um, but I don't remember if we had any say in what product lines we got. I got really lucky, I think, because I loved all the product lines I had. So, that put me in FR, in Forgotten Realms, from the beginning, from the gray box.
I was about to say
And
that one of the things I'd love to hear is some of your remembrances, your thoughts on that, the early days of FR, what it was like. I don't know, or if you don't have anything to say, we can move on.
oh no, I have plenty of stories. um
Yes.
um you sounded a lot like Ed right there, just so you know that you're channeling him. Um yeah, there was just a lot. Editing Ed
Mm,
was, I loved it. He's so, it's going to sound really wimpy. He's so creative, but he is.
right,
I mean, the stuff that he wrote when he was 8 years old will blow your socks off. Okay.
right.
Because he started when he was a child. And it's just, last year or the year before, I was asked to do voice work on it must have been before then. It must have been like 2019, 2020. Um, all the years that we're in the fourth 2020 now.
Uh,
I was asked by, my brain is turning off, so we won't worry about who it was.
sure.
Um,
Give
they
us.
were doing an audio thing of one of these stories that he wrote when he was 8 years old.
Right.
And they were going to give it to him. And I'm reading this story, and I have to keep telling myself he was 8 when he wrote this.
Mm,
He didn't write this in the last couple years. He he was 8, and he and I are the same age.
right.
So, he was writing this in 1966.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and I mean, it's repeated a lot. So it's strange that more people don't know it. That FR predates Dungeons and Dragons by a lot. He's been building that world
Yep.
since the mid '60s.
Yep. And it was a big thing for him to decide that yes, we were going to be given the rights to it and to expand it and to do X, Y, and Z with it, with certain caveats. That, there were things where he said, yes, as long as this is never touched. Yes, as long as you never do anything with so and so, whatever it
Right.
was. Um, but when when we did the Waterdeep box set with
Yeah.
all the maps, he brought those maps on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper,
Yeah.
and they had to be laid out on the floor and taped together so we could see what everything looked like.
Yeah.
And the way our cubicles were laid out at that point, there was kind of a central marketplace, if you will, an opening
Okay.
more or less in the middle. But where my cubicle was, I couldn't get to the ladies' room without going through that central area. And all this stuff is laid out on the floor, and everybody's oohing and eyeing over it. And I'm looking at it going, I can't walk on that.
I gotta pee.
Well, it was like, what am I supposed to do? Yo, I can't walk on that. Can we pick up this ward over here and kind of fold it so I can
Right.
slip by
Can
and go around the outside?
can someone move the marketplace? I gotta pee.
Pretty much, yeah. I remember that very well. It was like, we need to do something here, kids, because I got to be able to walk. Um, and there's also my classic story about reading a manuscript of his. I do not remember which one it was. But I'm reading along on this typed manuscript. Nothing was
Right.
on, it was not word processed. It was typewritten.
Right.
A funky typewriter with a broken T, so it always looked the same way. And I'm reading along and I get to the bottom of a page and I see the beginning of a sentence, and it's the simple subject. I'm going to talk grammar now.
Right.
I see the simple subject. So it's like the merchant, you know. And I turn the page and there's an opening parentheses. And I'm reading the parenthetical and I get to the bottom of the page and it still isn't done. And I turn the page and there's another couple paragraphs of this parenthetical. And then there's a verb. And out loud, I said, "Who did this? Who did this, Ed? I lost track by now. I don't know who did this." And I can hear everybody around me just starts cackling because they're like, "Oh, she's
Yeah,
editing Ed.
she
Yeah.
found Ed.
We know she's working on Ed. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
But and
Jeff,
that was typical. That wasn't unusual at all,
yeah.
as I came to find out.
Jeff Grubb, when we were talking about this, was going on at length about how you would have a page that would start with an open parentheses, and you would have nested parentheses and brackets and carets, and then the page would end with close caret, close bracket, close parentheses.
Oh, they were always
Yeah.
closed perfectly. There was never anything left dangling.
Right.
They were closed perfectly. But like I said, then you'd get to the verb and be like, "Who?
Who?
I don't know. Who did?
Who
Who did this?
what? Who what?
Yeah. Who done this? I don't know. I have no clue." So, and that was game stuff. I heard that the novels had that to a greater degree, but I never worked in books, so I don't know. I cannot speak to that.
My experience with Ed's turnovers, and other people have said this too, so I know it's not just me, is just the ridiculous of how he packed them.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. The layers and layers and layers of cellophane and tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
Ed.
it had something to do with having to send them through the Canadian postal system. It
Right.
was something to do with that. But yeah.
I don't. And for those watching, you may recall Ed was supposed to be a guest a few weeks back, and I'm still working on overcoming the technical difficulties that we never got past.
Oh.
Before we started recording this, Karen and I were going, and we had a little bit of microphone problem. Ed had the problem that the system would not recognize him when he logged in. Like, he couldn't even get to there. It just told him no. He put in the URL, and it told him no. And we could not figure out why.
Access
but
not.
then it's like, all right, well, it's Ed. Something like this is going to happen.
Right. Yeah, he has the problem I have, but much worse.
Right.
The tech thing. Yeah.
Sad. What of the early FR products do you have the strongest affinity towards? I mean, besides the Waterdeep box set keeping you out of the bathroom.
Besides those damn maps. I really enjoyed, I don't know if this counts as early. I really enjoyed all the Volo's guides.
Yeah.
Especially when Volo appeared one day because of the Volo Antique Car Museum down into Illinois. That's exactly where it came from. But I just thought he was a neat character. I liked his outlook, and here's this guy, he knows all this stuff, and he's always on the run. So sometimes he doesn't always tell the exact truth,
Right.
but it's enough to get you where you need to go. And it might tell you what you need to know about staying out of trouble, but it might not. And, I just thought that was fun. And the other one was Aurora's Whole
First
Realms
whole
catalog.
realm catalog. Yeah. I love those products
Because,
too.
and I'm pretty sure it was Anne who came up with it because we were talking about the Whole Earth catalog.
Right. Right.
Because there had just been a new edition of it, I think, or maybe a reprint. And we were talking about that. And Anne was like,
Right.
why don't we? And we all went, oh my God, that's a great idea. And away it went. We got it put on the schedule and it took off, you know.
I love those products. I wound up very towards the very end of TSR is when I was segueing out of editing into design, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I got assigned to pick up the Dragonlance bestiary for the fifth
Ah,
age game, um, and I took some spiritual inspiration in that, it's a book within the it's it's supposed to be an artifact from within the world, right? It's a
right,
book that was from one of the characters talking about all the
right,
monsters they met in their
right.
travels, and kind of like the whole realms book. It's They did a good job. In fact, Don Murin in the graphics department did a great job of giving the pages, the whole thing, just that feel of being. What's the adjective? It feels of the world. There's a word for that.
Okay.
You know?
Well,
Yeah.
I would call it the verisimilitude.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the word you were looking for?
That's
It's
the word. That's it. Yeah.
it's
Uh.
it's true to its setting.
Yeah.
It may not be true in the whole, but it
Right.
is true to its setting. Um, because here I'll go on a little tangent here. As a fiction editor,
Please do.
I have I always have that verisimilitude in the back of my mind
Yeah.
because fiction doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be believable.
Right.
And as long as it can be explained in a believable manner, okay, you know. But that's where I end up sometimes going, did they really use that word then? I'm not sure they used that word then. And I go on a hunt, I go down a rabbit hole. Um, like extraterrestrial. I
Right.
learned the other day that extraterrestrial as an adjective dates to, it was a 16th century date. I want to say
Wow.
1538, 1583, something like that.
And what were they?
Um,
What were they referring to as being extraterrestrial?
well, not aliens.
Right. Right. Right.
Things that did not seem to be of the world. Um,
So things like stuff from the realm of Fae or the world of the god. Those would
quite
be
quite possibly.
extraterrestrial.
I didn't go so far as to look for the citations,
Right.
because all I really wanted was first use. I want to
Right.
see how far back this dates. As a noun, and then the extraterrestrial pulled out a blaster, you know. Um, in that use, it only goes back to 1950.
Right. And it
But
probably would have begun as extraterrestrian.
maybe, I don't know. I didn't go that far either, because
Yeah.
what concerned me was the narrator of this story that is set post Civil War.
Right.
I'm there. We don't have an exact year. He didn't pin it down that tight, which is fine. Um, but I want to say late 1860s, very early 1870s, maybe pushing it.
Okay.
he referred to something as seeming to be extraterrestrial. And I was like, is that really what he would say? Would he use that word? Well, yes, he actually would as an adjective. He wouldn't say he looked like an extraterrestrial because they
Right.
didn't use it that way until 1950. But that's the kind of thing that I always have going on back here, when I'm.
These are the kind of conversations that editors love to have.
We do. We live for them. And other people roll their eyes and make horrible noises and slink out of the room. But yeah.
Well,
So
thankfully, it's
verisimilitude.
my show, so we can do that all we want.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah. So if
All right,
verisimilitude was the word you want, well, then there you go.
excellent. So
Yeah.
then, uh, let's go over to how you got to be the freelance editrix.
I left TSR when it was purchased. And I had literally just had my daughter. Um,
Right.
So it really didn't bother me that I was not asked to make the move because I probably would have said no. Who's going to move across halfway across
I
the
was going to
country with
ask
a
you. I didn't
newborn?
remember whether you had been asked or not.
No, I was not. And I got a decent severance. That was fine. That was all good. So I ended up doing just factory work, just
Right.
signing up with um, not Kelly Girls anymore, but the temp agencies
Temp agencies. Right.
to see what I could get. And I'm like, well, I'll try just about anything. So I did um I did a lot of uh precision molding work. I spent
Really?
10 years. I spent 10 years at a precision molding factory doing everything except material handling. That's about the only thing they didn't train me for. I knew how to run each kind of press. I knew how to
Hmm.
inspect the different kinds of things we made. And it was everything from medical stuff to milking machine pieces to sometimes duck calls, but we didn't do a whole lot of those when I was there. Those had been done before, but they were in the case up front as something that the company had made. And look here, we did this thing. And over time, they found out that I really kind of did know how to read and write, and I knew some English, and I ended up
You knew
moving.
some English.
I knew some English. I could figure it out. I think it was the day that I looked at the I looked at the documentation for something we were making. It was something to do with a milking machine. I don't remember which. It was a plug for one of the pieces that goes over the cow's teat.
Okay.
Okay, the rubber liner for that. There was also a plug that you could put in there because you can't just leave the thing hang empty if for some reason the cow, let's say the cow has mastitis and two of the teats you can't use and the other two are okay. You have to plug those two pieces on the
Okay.
milking machine so that the pressure will still work. And I'm looking at the documentation and it says sometimes a cow may have fewer than 4 udders.
Okay.
And I looked at it and I looked at the gal next to me and I said, check me if I'm wrong, but if I had a cow that had more than 1 udder, I'd be calling Guinness. Okay. Because there's something wrong here. And I ended up taking it to the head of QA and I said, this doesn't even make any sense. This isn't the right word. Well, nobody else ever said anything. I said, well, I'm sorry nobody else ever said anything. I'm telling you it's the wrong word.
Right.
How many udders do your cows have? And then I ended up being handed all the QA documents to proof them to make sure that nothing else said something stupid like mentioning cows with 4 udders. And then I ended up doing working in the QA department doing the spot check measurements, the in-process measurements for their record keeping. And I ended up doing shipping,
Mm.
doing all the invoicing and all that stuff. I didn't have to handle any of the money, but I had to do the invoicing and call the trucking companies
Right.
every day. Hey, we need to pick up at such and such. Um, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, the only thing they really didn't train me to do was the material handling. I didn't have to go back and learn how to mix the different compounds and drag them out to the press where they were going to be
So
needed and all
why
that.
would you leave such a wonderful position?
Gosh, I don't know. I I just don't know. I got laid off from there 3 times. They kept calling me back. They'd have these layoffs because things would get tight,
Right.
and I immediately, of course, what you do, you file for unemployment. Um, and I would look because you have to look for another job when you are doing that. And
Right.
I would look, nothing would turn up, and then eventually the phone would ring, and it would be John, and he'd be like, "Hey, you want to come back? We're taking people back." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come back." And each time they took me back, they had a different thing for me to do,
Right.
which was okay. That was fine. One time I ended up coming back to a third shift job, which worked okay because I had a housemate at that point in my trailer. Um, so they were home when I was at work. So Kelly, I didn't have to find somebody to watch Kelly at 1
Right.
o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that wasn't an issue, which worked out okay. So then I was on third shift and I was running one of the injection presses, and it was one that made, they were called actuators. They were these little tiny clear silicone things the size of a grain of rice.
Okay.
And there were 4 of them on each stem. I can't remember the word for it. That's not the right word, but
I'm not going
four, four, four of these little guys, and there were like 5 to a run in the press.
to. Mm.
So then there was a certain way you had to blow the parts out. There was a special air hose you had to use with a special diffuser thing on the end of it so it didn't blow the parts all over the place. And then you had to pick the flash off these little things that were the size of a grain of rice.
What
And
fun.
it was also the machine that was notorious for not running correctly, because there was almost always something wrong with the air in the line, and we could not fix it. Maintenance had to fix it, and there's nobody on maintenance on third shift.
Right.
So there were plenty of times where I would be like, and there were only 2 of us out in that room on third shift, and the other gal was great. I liked her. I worked with her for several years there. And I'd be like, "Barb, this thing is running for crap. I'm shutting it down. What else can I do over there? Come over here by me and we'll run these together." So we would end up doing twice as many things as what she needed. And I wouldn't do any of these, and I would just leave a note and go, "Machine crapped out again." And they'd be like, "Oh, that. Okay." But the last time I got laid off from there was 2009. And I was absolutely crushed, absolutely crushed. And at that point, I was with Sean and his 2 girls, so
Mm.
it was the 5 of us. And I said, I could probably do this editing thing, because Google Plus was a big thing then, and I
Right.
had a really cool circle of people that I interacted with there, and a lot of them were um, indie writers. And we would get to talking, and finally it kind of came around to, "Hey, would you edit my book?" Somebody
Mm.
said. And I went, "Sure. Here's what I charge." And they went, "Okay." And at that point I was charging a penny and a half a word.
Okay.
And they were like, "Yeah, okay." And so I figured out how I was going to break it down in the contract and all this. And I said, if you want a real contract, I'll draw one up, but I'm okay with an email trail and a virtual handshake that we just go, yes, this is what we're going to do. Okay, we get it all in email, so it's all
Right.
tracked, and then I don't have to worry with the other stuff. So I edited a bunch of things at that point, some of which I'm going to reach over on my bookshelf real quick.
Hey, please do.
I'll be back in a second. Here I am.
Oh,
This
let me. Where can I back here? Go ahead. Yeah, look at Feast of Shadows.
this is probably my favorite series of all time.
Hmm.
There are 5 novelettes or novellas. I'm not quite sure. The numbers get weird. People can, conflate
Yeah.
them.
No.
Um,
Get a lot of arguments over that in the bar conventions.
yeah, and whatever. It's a book. Um, there's 3 of them in this one, and then there's a part 2 that has 2 more.
Okay.
And as it is put here, out of the clear-cut jungle, out of nowhere, a man appeared with his eyes rimmed in blue, the last shaman, a man who could make magic. Across 5 stories, 5 victims of the inexplicable narrate strange encounters with an enigmatic titan, a man without a past. Caught in his decades-long battle with an unseen foe, each is given the power to alter human history or end it forever. It is so cool. It is unlike anything else I have ever read or worked on. And I really wish that Rick had been able to get a publisher for it.
Who's the author?
Rick Wayne.
Okay.
And I don't think he's writing anymore. I think he had to stop.
Is this book still for sale, or is it something people would have to try to find used?
I will say go to rickwayne.com
Okay.
because he used to sell them through his website. So I will say go to rickwayne.com.
Rickwayne.com.
Uh-huh. It's down here on the bottom. Down here.
Go.
That's one. And the other one, this one actually won an award from a historical novel thing. This one is, come back. Where am I? There I am. The Jesuit Letter by Dean Hamilton. He's a Canadian writer. This was his first book, which, like I said, won, I don't remember the name of the award, from a Canadian group from 2015. This was a long time ago. Long time ago. But this one is Elizabethan. It's about an ex-soldier turned play actor, abandoned the war against the Spanish in Flanders. He ends up in London, which, of course, the inn yards are closed because of the plague. And the Earl of Worcester's men are on the road. They're a theatrical troupe, touring troupe. Mm-hmm. And he accidentally intercepts a coded letter from a hidden Jesuit priest, which was kind of like a bad thing at that point.
Right.
So he has to uncover the conspiracy and find the Jesuit to clear his name or die a traitor's death.
Oh, dear.
So it's just the immersion is just amazing. It just pulls you in and keeps you there. And that has a sequel, and I believe he's working on a 3rd one now. He usually runs a Kickstarter to finance his publications.
Right.
So I think he's got one coming up for the 3rd one, which will be cool because that means he'll be calling me and saying, hey, there's another book. Let's do it. So that'll be fun. And I'm kind of winding down. I call myself semi-retired at this point. Because most of the people I did a lot of work for aren't writing anymore. They did what they wanted to do and they stopped. And I haven't got a lot of new ones to replace them, which is okay. There's a fellow in California who does short story anthologies,
Mm-hmm.
and he's actually won some awards for his screenplays.
Huh.
And then he decided he wanted to do fiction, and word traveled, and he ended up calling me. So I've done his stuff. He does horror slash weird fiction. It's it's very out there.
Okay.
Um, and I haven't, I'm trying to remember. I think the last one I got from him was last year. But let me grab one of those real quick because his stuff is also very cool. He is, where are we? This was the first one. What goes on in the walls at night?
Okay.
And that cover pretty much tells you what you're in for.
What goes on in the walls
What goes on in the walls at night?
at night?
His stuff is published by Bad People. Bad People. I think you can find him on Amazon. I think you can get him there.
And his name is
Andrew Schrader.
okay.
It's his website is andrewjschrader.com.
SHRADER.
SCH.
SCH.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
RADER.
And
.com.
online, you have a site called Grammargeddon,
Mm-hmm.
which is not, as you were
That
saying
was
before, not as busy as it used to be, but
No, it
it's
isn't.
still
But
a.
it's still there. I don't think I'll ever take it down. That was actually me and Ray Valise.
Uh,
That started as the two of us. And I will admit we began it with the evil side of editing.
the evil
With
side of editing.
the the evil side, with intending to publish, look at this mistake, can you believe somebody did this, like menus with ridiculous typos on them and signs with stupid misspellings, and um, which over the years I have come to realize is not a good thing to do. You just don't. If you're not getting paid to fix it, why?
Right.
As one of my he's a linguist, but he's also an editor, and he's one of the people I met through ACES, the Society for Editing. James says it's FYPM. You pay
Yeah.
me. That is
Fair
our
enough.
motto.
Yeah.
FYPM.
Yeah.
So if I'm not getting paid to fix it, I'm not going to point out anything that's wrong. It's just not worth it. It's diminishing returns. Totally not worth it. But in the intervening time, Ray ended up stepping back because life got in the way for him, because it
Right.
does that.
It
And
it does.
and I asked him, I said, is it okay if I keep going with this? Do you want me to close it down and start something else or what? And he goes, no, you know what? You just take it. You've been doing more than I have anyway. So you
Right.
just take it. It's okay. So it then became my place to post things that would help writers
Right.
and maybe editors, but not necessarily. I was really aiming at the indie writers. And the series of posts that has gotten the most attention and still does, and it's 10 years later now, was on the mechanics of dialogue. How to use quotes,
Right.
where to put the commas, the difference between a tag and a beat, um, how to do interrupted dialogue.
Right.
When do you use an ellipsis? When do you use an em dash? Do you have to have pairs of them? How does all that work? That kind of stuff.
I should go read those. I, I've got my
They're
own
there for
logo
the
and everything.
taking. They're there
I,
for the taking.
I am going to pause in the sketching now. We've gotten this far. I'm going to finish, as I always do, I'm going to finish the drawing offline and post it to folks later in the week that this airs. But
Cool.
not bad for an hour or so of
That's
sketching.
pretty good considering we've been yakking the whole time.
Right. That's the
I'm
matter.
impressed.
Uh,
I know what it was.
um, So, before before I shift entirely, um, oh no, let's shift. So this show is about the 50th anniversary of D&D, and of
Mhm.
course that's our careers are more than just D&D, but it is
Mhm.
a big part of you know it's a big part for me, and I think probably for you
Mhm.
too, of
Mhm.
what you did and what you look back on. What And as you say, you weren't too unhappy not to get invited out to Wizard of the Coast, but looking kind of as at your time at TSR as a whole, when you think about it, in what light do you think about it?
Very fondly.
Yeah,
Very fondly. Um, that was a dream job.
yeah,
I've had my dream job. What I do now, I love, and I
right.
am very lucky to be able to do it. Um, and I say this every time. I would not be able to do it if it weren't for my husband. He is very supportive. Um, I couldn't do it by myself. Uh, and not only because he's my house IT guy, but there's so much more than that. So much more than that. But no, TSR was my dream job. That was the best 11 years of my working life
Right.
right there. And it was the people, it was the projects, it was everything. All the whole ball of wax, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
very, very fondly.
if you had to pick your the first, I mean, not top three, first five credits that you think of that you are on your list, your
My credits,
yeah, what would they be?
the FR Gray box,
Mm-hmm.
um, Amazing Engine,
Mm-hmm.
because that was just cool. It was out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but it was cool. Marvel
Let me tell you,
Superheroes.
the reason that came up, I said earlier in our conversation that we were talking about it. The reason it came up is I am a huge fan of the concept, what it is conceptually. I don't love the rules, and there's just some of that's taste, but I
Yeah.
love it. For years, I would carry around at Wizards every once in a while. They would find a storage locker full of old TSR stuff, and they didn't want it, so they'd bring it into the office and say, "Who wants this?" And
Take this
I would
stuff.
always take a copy of the Amazing Engine rule book, the 32
The
page,
core.
yeah, the core
Mhm.
thing, and I had all of the world books too. I already had those,
Mhm.
but I got every copy of that core thing that I could after giving
Uh-huh.
other people a shot at it,
Uh-huh.
just because the concept of what this game was so good. I would bring it into meetings and then give it to other people because I knew I had five more in my desk.
Mhm.
The A game um, uh, ahead of its time conceptually, and
Yeah.
it didn't succeed. I think a lot because of that, the fact that it just didn't fit with its time.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
idea was
now
not
now there's, the fate system and the D6
yeah,
system,
yeah,
and I can't remember what the other ones are. There's a whole bunch of them
right.
that here, learn this and then do all this.
Right. No, I mean the
You know.
thing, and I guess people who don't know, one of my favorite things, in fact, my favorite thing about it is that the concept in Amazing Engine was that you built a character, and although you could use it in different things, you would conserve the XP you got. You would just you did not have to go back and have a beginning level character. You
You didn't have to
had
start
that
over.
core character that you plugged in. So the more you played, you have
Mhm.
a campaign of this and a campaign of that. And
Mhm.
when appropriate, start at the beginning. But if it's just
Mhm.
playing, you can take your fourth level character and
Mhm.
and apply the skin of the world that you're playing
Mhm.
in. And oh, blah, blah, love it.
Cool stuff,
Yes,
Maynard.
I just had Zeb on a few weeks ago we had so much to talk about. We really didn't get around to it. That was one of the things I thought about. I'm gonna try to get him on again at some point.
Yeah,
Um, just
I hear you.
making sure I say to him how much what I think.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, that just yeah, people didn't get it. And
Or
it's not that hard. It's not a difficult thing to
right.
grasp, but yeah, they didn't get it, and I don't think
Well, I mean, I think part they didn't get it, and part they didn't want it.
want it.
The the world at the gaming world at the time was not didn't want that. You served a fine meal, and they said, I don't like lamb." Right? This is
Hmm.
great. You know, it just it might have done everything it it needed to perfectly, and it's still, I think, my opinion is that its main falling was that people didn't want that thing, at least not in the
Yeah,
numbers that TSR needed them to.
not yeah, and numbers were everything.
Yeah,
Random House ran everything. It if it's in the catalog and it says it's coming out in May, by God, it's coming out in May. You know,
oh yeah,
whatever it's going to take to get it out the
whatever it
door.
is. All right, so
Yeah.
before we wrap up, again along this line, that we're on the 50th anniversary.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think about having and D&D is more popular than it's ever been just by
Isn't
measure.
that wild?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
just blows my mind.
Who would have thought back in the 80s and 90s when we were doing this that, first of all, that 30, 40 years later, people would care about it, but
Yeah.
that
That
more
there'd be a
people.
TV show,
Yeah,
and I'm not talking about the cartoon, we're talking Stranger Things.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
who'd have thunk? Who'd have thunk?
um, what do you think about being a part of that legacy?
It's kind of a mind blower.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Mainly, and I think that's mainly because at least my perception of my place
Right.
is very much behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I wasn't a big name. It's like, ooh, Zeb Cook's gonna be here. Ooh, Jeff Grubb's gonna be here. Who is she? What did she do? I had I had my own little fan club at Gen Con several years running, and they were three
Yeah.
of the sweetest guys from Osseo, Michigan. And they made a point of telling me that they read everything that had my name on it.
Right.
Why they decided it was me, I don't know. Because it didn't
Because
matter what product line it was in, it mattered that my name was on it. And I was
right.
like, dudes, if that's what you need to do, okay. You know,
Well, again,
thank you.
I think we were saying this before we started recording, or I think I was saying this before we started recording. Uh, editors, editors always have more effect than the general audience thinks, but particularly the way things worked on D&D at TSR, you were part of the products would not have been what they were if not for the
Oh,
influence of
right,
the editors from
right,
the word go. Right?
right.
You didn't come on at the end and polish the words. You were
No,
part
we
of
were there at the start.
conceptualizing the
Yep.
product and talking with the designers while they're writing it and
Hmm.
working with them afterwards.
It was very integral.
Yeah,
It wasn't like in book publishing, the people that I know who work in book publishing, especially the ones who do copy edits and proofreads, they just come in cold.
right.
You know, the book's already been through however many sets of galleys or whatever, and okay, here it is. We want to proofread, and they're looking at it going, "This needs to be edited," and you're not paying me to do that, so I'm going to make these suggestions, and we'll see if the PE is going to do anything about it. But this really needs to be edited.
Right.
You know, we didn't have that because we were there at the start, and And a lot of the designers would come to the person they know that was going to be their editor, or the product manager if we didn't have the editor assigned yet. You
Right.
know, they would come to us because they knew that we cared and we knew what they knew to a
Right.
point. And they could say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing XYZ. What do you think?" And we'd either go, "Oh my God, no, don't do it," or "Why are you talking to me? Go, you know,
Or
go work."
and add this. Oh, what
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah. And what about this thing?
right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
All right. Well, Karen, we have eaten up 90 minutes of your time, and I
Like a lot
really,
of time.
I know,
Yeah.
but it flew by because the stories are great. This, you say why people you had a little fan club. This is why, because you're involved at that level, because you have these kinds of stories from that time, and
About being trapped in my office and not being able to pee. Yeah.
Um, it's been a pleasure getting to catch up with you. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Thank
coming on.
you.
I know you don't do many of these, so I
Mm.
appreciate it. Folks, remember Karen S. Conlin. You can look for her site. It's still around. Grammargeddon.com. Lots of great.
Every now and then I throw something up there. I throw up a new
Yeah,
post. It might just say, "Hey, sorry, I haven't written anything. Life's been wild," and I just move on.
right.
So
All right. So you hold on a second, Karen. I'm gonna go and take you off screen and do a
I'm
closing
sitting
statement.
right here. Bye.
All right, there we go. So, thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. I have, I have a great time chatting with all these folks, but getting to catch up with Karen was an especially good treat. You can tune in here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time for another episode. In the meanwhile, it would be great if you went over and joined our free newsletter over at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. Let you know what the who the guests are coming up. You'll also be the first ones to see the finished artwork. You get that the week before it goes out to the public. And you also, if you're a paid member, get access to uh, process videos, which take the creation of the entire piece and condense it into a minute long animated video. It's like magic. The art appears before your eyes. But as I say, that's paid. All the rest of what you get out of it is free. Please check out 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. I guess the internet person in me has to say, if you haven't yet, please like or click subscribe, whatever platform you're watching this on. It helps. And I like to explain the reason I ask that is not because I like people telling me, we like you, we love you, thumbs up. Admittedly, I do. The reason is that helps the system, the algorithm, the dreaded algorithm, share this with other people. The more you interact with it, the more you click a like or leave a comment, the more it tells the system, this is something people actually enjoy. And then it helps get more people in to come and join us. And we want more people, don't we? Don't we? Yes, we do. So until next time, thanks for joining me, and I will be back next week with another interview and another cartoon homage. Take care, everyone. Bye.